Tinubu fought his way through. And you and I know that he dollarized the election.
Nigerians are not for war unless pushed to the wall.
That the man who will produce to be our president has this baggage.
You have to be corruption compromising before you can be relevant.
The president came to power and his first policy statement was that subsidies gone. A few weeks later or days later, we have the unification of the forex window. And that has been the origin of where we are today. This government is high on intention, but is low on delivery. And they just need to harness that and look at it. You see people protesting and doing government things. They turn campaigns to singing and dancing. When you see, there's something about us in this country. We like to plant tomato and expect corn to come out. If you look at the charade that election campaigning is, you will know what's going to come out.
Welcome to Punch Exclusive. My name is Melanie Ishola. As the President Bola Tinubu marks his second anniversary in office, several scorecards have emerged on the internet, and not so many have graded him so excellently. Now, whether or not you think the president should have his job in the next 2 years, well, it is midterm, and he's now also emerged the sole candidate of his party, the ruling All Progressives Congress, for the 2027 election. It is a good place for me to ask that we come around for a conversation that impacts us, don't you think? If you are ready, join me as I talk to Professor Anthony Kila. He's a political economist, strategist, a public intellectual, and a director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies. Good to have you, Professor.
Good to be here.
Absolutely.
Good to be here.
And I thought it was just such a great conversation that needed to be had, and you had to look for the right person to hold this conversation. We've had so much in the news in the past few days, and you'd agree that everybody, I would say, have their rights to give the seeming report card that they are given, because at the base of it is the fact that at least everyone is a citizen of this country. And so in some sense, you have experienced the economy, you have experienced the security, you just have had some experience of our dear nation in the past 2 years under the current administration. But it is great to ask you for your own scorecard, Professor. How do you rate the current administration? 2 years it's been, but then how do you rate?
Well, two things. I mean, number one is that you say everybody has an opinion. Let's hope they have informed opinion. I think everybody has an experience. And that's natural. What perhaps is necessary is for people to have opinions. The other thing is to state that 2 years is half of the contract that was given, people call it mandate. Let's call it a contract that was given to candidate Bola Tinubu, now President Bola Tinubu, and his cabinet for everything. In my view, I teach this and I've said this elsewhere. Broadly speaking, there are 4 P's which you use to judge a government in power. One is promise, the other is performance of policy, the third is perception of what they're doing, and the fourth is the process. If you look at those 4 P's that I've mentioned to you, it is difficult to rate the government high in what they are doing, and I'll explain why. The candidate campaigned on the slogan of renewed hope. The translation of that campaign is that life will be better because the hope that was promised before will be renewed. And in people's mind, what that meant will be lower cost of food, more employment, better roads, better security, a prosperous future, because a city boy, in the words of the candidate, that understood the dynamics of modern economy was coming to power. He came to power in a very vigorous campaign in which he's not only had to fight his opponents, but I dare say even members of the political party as well. But given the background of the candidate Bola Tinubu, the former governor, the politician, it was easy to see him as something more vibrant than the very dull, fair, lanky man that has now gone to Daura, who became president. It was easy to imagine that this new person will have, more vibes in him. Never mind the Bulaba Balabu incidents that happen along the way. The hope was that the imagination of many people that you have something of the situation coming in, and that is a promise. So if you juxtapose that promise with perception today, you're going to struggle to rate him high. Whether you love him or you loathe him, you're going to struggle because around you, people are struggling with the price of food, with the price of energy, petrol, electricity has gone up. Some lucky people have been stable in the area, but they're paying more for it. Transportation has gone up. The jobs are not really out there. To that extent, it will be difficult to rate him high. In terms of performance of policy, the argument of the government and those who are pro-government is that they are doing some reforms that will then bring a better future.
That is long-term.
That is a long-term thing. You see, that may very well be so. But if you reason like me and you think that going into government is a contract to, if not serve the people, I'm too old to be hyperbolical about this thing, at least to serve the purpose for which you're elected, one will have to remember that you didn't promise us that you're going to do hard reforms and we're going to suffer. What you promised us that things going to be fine. And therein lies the process. The moment, and again, so because of that, one has to score low. Then you go to the process. The first part of the process is the narrative and consequence. The president came to power and his first policy statement was that subsidies gone. A few weeks later or days later, we have the unification of the forex window. And that has been the origin of where we are today. Now, here's the thing. If you say thoughtfully that I'm going to do reform, and these reforms are going to be hard, in terms of process, perception, and communication, if I were president, I would have come out to say, fellow Nigerians, thank you for electing me. Now that I'm there, it appears things are going to be tough. So bear with me in the next 18 months. Things are going to be very tough, and we are going to have to tighten our belt. But I would add, because we're going to tighten our belt, I personally will also cut off A, B, C, D, C. And I will ask my ministers to cut off A, B, C, D, and I will beg, I'll use the word beg, I will beg the parliamentary arm of government to also cut A, B, C, D, so that we're doing the sacrifice together. You see, that statement will have given him the moral authority to ask labor not to increase wages. And to say in that 18 months, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to increase our production base. So we will see ourselves in a journey. We'll understand where we're coming from. We'll see where we're going to, and it becomes easier to carry the burden. The problem we have with process here is that nobody announced a moment of austerity on the horizon. Nobody sees the people doing the authority, i.e. the government, leading a life of austerity. So we have a situation where all of a sudden the church and the worshippers are poor, but the priest or the clergy is rich and is doing very well. So everybody is hungry, but leaders are looking well. That is bad. That is a bad place to be.
Professor, I would allow you go on, but very quickly you've made so much out in this short while, and I am looking at the fact that the central thing to this conversation has been that there was no way you could score the current administration so high. No. And of course, you had equally said it was rather too soon to be scoring him because it's just midterm. But at the same time, we have to look at what has been and be able to hold pragmatic conversations. In that sense, there has been a recent NOI bill where it said that there's been a seeming gradual, incremental, better perception rating of the government. As of March last year, I believe it was at a paltry 11%, but we're told that as of April this year, we are at a 40% better perception and rating level. And it's said to be a poll given to Nigerians to participate in. And so it's said people have now come to a term to say, well, we think the President Bola Tinubu is doing well. Where do you put this? Or are you part of those questioning where the poll was carried out as well?
Let me say the polite and cautioned way to comment that poll is to request that the pollsters give us more information on how they conducted their poll. The other spontaneous, natural way is to request that anybody that participates in that poll should send a message to Punch Video now, as they're watching now, to say, I participate in that video and this is why I give them that answers. I say this because when we look around you, I struggle to find 40% of people who say the government is now doing better. And we have to be careful in this country when we deal with data and institution. Because I am involved in polls. I do research as part of my job. We have to be very careful, because if we cannot hold our situation and institutions sacred, if we cannot trust our polls, or if the polls and institution sound so disconnected with reality, it's creating a problem that we cannot even imagine. Elsewhere in the world, when you read a poll, you don't struggle to understand or believe it, because it truly reflects a reality. So I'll ask our viewers again, anywhere they meet more than 5 people, to look around them and say, how many of us in this room feel things are getting better with this government? You know, those are simple things that you can do.
Yes. Yes. So very quickly, I'll take it away from polls, which essentially also speaks to data, and go full-length data and look, for example, at the GDP averages, the inflation rates, unemployment rates, and the likes. For example, the poverty rate in Nigeria 2022 to 2025, I'll drill out at 40.1%, 38.9%, 38.8%, and 41.3%, respectively. If we were looking at the agroeconomic scorecards and so on, and to ask you to please help me put all of these side by side, the food insecurity that the people currently are facing, and where the people are asking that during the President Bola Tinubu's candidacy, he did promise some agbado and whatnot in his infamous campaign speech, talking to what was going to become of the growing or the teeming youth population, and how he was going to amass the strength of the youth and be able to do something and turn the economy around. Where do we put all of this today?
Well, I think, you see, that is what happens. Campaign is magic, is drama, is talk. Governance is experience, is gauge, is numbers. It's not something you can wish or talk away. And that's what we're facing now. I believe, contrary to what some people might like to say, I think this government, this administration, is actually very high on intention. I think they mean well. I think because, you know, Bola Tinubu is a man of legacy. He's a man that if he had his way, he would paint the sky green and have his name written on it, you know. And that's a mindset. They would like to do great things. What is missing is the process. I argue their ability to get it right is the problem, because they're applying some textbook solutions that shows lack of proper rigor in the way they're doing it. We've talked about what is not good, and these indices are very clear. Unemployment, inflation, cost of living are very things that
insecurity, we add that as well.
Insecurity, you cannot dispute it. But I tell you what, it must be said that the government are doing some things. For example, they're building some infrastructure. Yes. For example, they're getting kudos from the IMF and the World Bank. They've paid back the loan. You see, the problem they're having is that they're not looking at, maybe it's empathy, they're not looking at the effects today. So to that extent, the administration of Bola Tinubu, when people praise them, the World Bank, the stock exchange, they look like a woman who is cooking in the kitchen and telling you, or somebody, not a woman, somebody is cooking in the kitchen and is telling you the food is going to be great when I finish it. But in the meantime, we're hungry in the living room.
What can we have to
What can we have? You're saying that food will be fantastic when I finish it.
Okay.
When people talk about these reforms, you know, and how they're planning things, I keep thinking that the presidency appears to be like somebody who's cooking in the kitchen, telling those waiting at the table that the food will be great. It's going to be fantastic. It will be the best food ever. But it's taking time. And right now, people are hungry. I've heard people say that's what the Israelites did when they were taken through the desert. But guess what? The president is not Moses, and we're not going through the desert. So
We don't have manna.
and we don't have. There's no manna because that's the point.
Yes.
At one point, even God had to intervene with manna. But there's no manna here, so we need to think about it that way. The other example I think is when people say the stock exchange is doing well, IMF is praising them, Washington is praising the government. I said to them, when they do that, it makes the president look like a woman who looks good on Instagram, but the children are badly dressed and are hungry at home. And real life is miserable when others are praising that kind of person. Or a man as well, anybody, people who go, let's say people who go on Instagram, doing pictures, when in reality their life is a misery, and they get that praises and likes, and they dwell on that. The advantage is that those ones can actually become influencers. The president cannot become influencer. Ministers cannot be. Nobody's going to pay. It's paid to deliver results, as you rightly put it. So we have to be very careful about this thing and know that it's a problem. The other problem the president has in terms of process is that when this president came in and had over 40 ministers.
Exactly where I was going. His cabinet.
Please, I'll let you go ahead.
Absolutely. Because, I looked at what you had spoken about, the process, and drawing from the 4 Ps that we started from. And I think the process is really key.
Absolutely.
And there is no way you look at process and then you do not look at what the people doing the job, who are around him. You just spoke about somebody you believe is a great visionary, and then you spoke about somebody whom you believe is about a life of legacy. Rightly so. And for those who are questioning, is it about the vision of the President Bola Tinubu? Is it about the communication of the vision, or is it about the individuals who have now constituted the power blocks of interpreters of his vision, in which this case, I would say the ministers. And we've seen some reshufflements as well. What would you say? Are we in the right space with the current crop of ministers? Or do we need to move things around it?
No, I do not think we're in the right place. But generally speaking, I'm making my point not to spend my time blaming ministers. I always blame the person who was elected and the person that appointed them, because they interpret his vision, and it's his duty to ensure they interpret that vision, and where not possible to fire them. So I don't spend my time on ministers, although they have responsibilities, but their own responsibility is to do their job, keep their job, and then respond to the country, the world later on when they want to deal with their life. Because don't forget that some people have gone to Abuja as ministers. Before they left, we saw them as golden boys. They've come back and they've been rather quiet now. People will think of the ones they know that I'm talking about. That thing will rate them. Here's the thing. When President Bola Tinubu became president, one of the first disappointments he gave me was that when he was going to nominate his cabinet, it took him so much time. He nominated it a day before. There's something they say in my part of the world that evening is judged by morning. That was already a bad sign. The other thing he did is that very low-hanging fruit. He could have shown the world that this is a role I'm prepared for. Yes. 1, nominate his minister immediately. 2, put their portfolios there. Make history. That's a very simple way of making history. To be the first president that went there with portfolios. Just for us to know that there's a new sheriff in town. The other thing is this, that he had so many ministers. When people criticized him for having so many ministers that he wasn't there, I defended it. I said, it's okay. This is the most political president we have. He has people he has to sort out. The popular expression is settle. I don't mean settle, let's be careful. He has people he has to forge alliance to be in government. But you see, in return for that, what we should have expected is 40 big reforms. 40 big programs. If you have 40 people who are ministers, and if we had
40 lofty ideas.
Let's not even 40. Let's give them 30. Some people are just who they are. There's no way. If you have 40 people around you, some people are going to be.
Some ministries are even collaborative in function.
Well, some people are just not born stars. They get positions. There's some people that there's nothing you can do. And I want our viewers to think about this. If you look around you, whether in your classroom, in your place of work, there are always some people that can never shine. It's just the way things work in life. So we need to bear that in mind. Out of over 40, if we had 30 great things.
Star players.
So we hear about, and I don't want to judge anybody high or low, but we hear about the guy building road. We hear about the one doing light. That one even wanted to tell us how to use our fridge. But at least we hear about him. Where are the others? They are safely still sleeping. Maybe we should not disturb them. Those ones should be called minister asleep. Do not disturb.
But there was also one we heard a lot of, the Minister of Women Affairs, who now has been fired. It did raise some questions at that time.
But that one was being a new woman. That one got there, she and the people around her. Let's be careful, people who say women and youth, because that was a woman and a youth. Yeah, but let's be careful. You see how she ended. The ones we hear about, we only tend to hear them about bad things, And I think the president needs to go and look at that to even say, they set up something about checking their performance. One, it wasn't as original as the way they were making it too. He hasn't really delivered. It's a bit of problem we have. We need to look at it that way. To that extent, I think the president needs to look at things and give an honest assessment. Now, there's something very fascinating. So far, I've been criticizing the president. But guess what I actually noticed as well? And it is that of all the people who have assessed the presidency's 2 years in office, the most honest has actually been the president himself. When he said, we're doing things, the reforms are going on, I understand that people are not getting results yet, and I want them to bear with us. That is a stroke of honesty. I want us to watch out for some people. The people who say things are going well, and that it is not true. Some of them say the food are cheaper. I don't know where they're getting it. But we need to be careful about those people, because those are very dangerous people. It is either they're totally ignorant and unconnected to reality that they might kill us with their mouth, or they're so disingenuous, they're so partisan that for the sake, that they cannot say evil, that for the sake of where they are, they will lie blatantly. We should be careful of those people in the future. Those are the dangerous people in the society. Because it is very possible to be a friend, a colleague, an ally, a staff of the president, a party member, to say, I think this president, and let me give them a very free information of how to be a spokesperson, or how to be a supporter of the president. It is very possible to say, I believe this president is the best we can have now. We're not getting the best result, but he's better than the rest. Or better still, the rest are going to be worse than him. That is a way to be truthful. To say, I understand that things are bad, they will be better. The reason why they're bad is because of ABC. And perhaps we could have done something differently. But let me tell you, this is the best man so far.
You're bringing me to speak of Felix Morka, much as I wasn't going to speak of him, because I'm not trying to make this conversation about personalities attacking who said what at what time, but essentially about, the commonwealth of you and I, and our dear nation, Nigeria, and what we see for ourselves and for our children coming. And I looked at how he took on some questions, conversations on the national television, and where it seemed to say nobody who has analyzed the 2 year in office of President Bola Tinubu has given an informed prescription. And I've looked around, this is not so. I've listened to Alfred Ruweni, I've listened to a number of people who have actually come with data to say not just the ills, but equally the great things.
Absolutely.
And this is also what we're doing here.
Well, that is true. I mean, it's easy for us to say that. I like the fact that they're doing some infrastructure. I like the fact that they've paid the IMF loan. I like the fact that they've created the Consumer Credit Board. I like the fact that they're talking about students' loan. I repeat, this government is high on intention, but is low on delivery. And they just need to harness that and look at it. And it is not true that there are no alternative ideas. I mean, people who say that, it's a shallow way of looking at it.
Let's look at the current crop of the rave of coalition, as it were, right? So, and I think a key or a fastest way to look at this would be the recent 60th birthday celebration of the former governor and former minister of Nigeria, former governor of Rivers State, Rotimi Amechi, where quite a number of people came together at this celebration, you could say, belonged in the opposition, and they took turns at the rounds, talking to this administration, and then you then look critically and say, who could do better? That's been a major question in my heart since I heard them all speak. You all, in some capacity, have served this country, whether at the micro level, macro level, in some capacity. What can you offer differently? But if you looked at that also in another sense to say, you're coming together, and it's for me looking like a repeat of 2015, where we then said, so anything but Jonathan, right? And please offer us the substantials. What are the cogents of what the issues we currently have are, and how can we get out of it? What do you make of this coalition?
Well, I think from where you stop, I think it's going to be more difficult in 2026, 2027 to do, well, it starts in 2026. In 2026, 2027 to do anything.
In 2015.
2015. So I think that will be more difficult. I think so far so bad for the opposition. The opposition looks divisive, in disarray, and indeed quite sleepy. It's not very clear.
I doesn't think so. He thinks it would be a charade for the president to think he would be re-elected, or at least get the support of the North.
Well, by the time we get to the vote, we'll see. At the moment, the opposition does not look strong enough. It does not look alternative enough. It does not look reliable enough.
So you still trust the current administration?
No, not a matter of trust. It's impossible not to trust anybody. It's not that you must trust. I mean, the current administration, I know, I'm not impressed by them. These ones, I'm not very clear what they're doing yet. At the moment, what we're seeing is a gale of defection from opposition to government. Now, people say that the reason why they defect, let's start from the defect.
The reason for defection, yes.
People say the reason why they leave their party and go to the other is because there is no strong ideology that binds them. It is true that there's no strong ideology, and I want our viewers to think of something. In other systems, like in Washington and in the Westminster government, there are more people who are divorced or separated from their spouses and partners than have left their political parties. So in a way, their political party is even almost stronger than love or anything that they're doing, because they truly have ideology or ideas that bind them. Here we do not have that. That is true. We need to work on it. But we also need to look at the character, the personal, the ideology idea is an objective thing. But we also need to look at a relative, a subjective thing, a personal thing. The characters of these individuals who jump from one party to the other, who are they? I argue that many of them are boys that we're calling men, that we're calling leaders and distinguished. They're not people who can stand for something.
How did we make them?
Well, that is what leadership is all about. We need to go and relook at our leadership. We need to look. If somebody come and say they want to run for council or senate or anything, we will need to look at them. Who were you 20 years ago? What have you done with your life? What do you stand for? How often have you stood in a position where you are not getting something and you are standing for it firmly? And then when you had a chance, what did you do with it? We the people need to start looking at that, because I think at the moment, these politicians, either because they're weak and they can be coerced into another role, or because they're frameable, because people say maybe they're using EFCC to blackmail them. Why will you be blackmailed? Why will you steal so that they can now blackmail you? It's easy to blame the other people. I think it's laziness. Or maybe they're not being coerced. Maybe they say they've changed their mind. They must be pretty shallow if they cannot see things beyond 3 years.
Yes. Or maybe it's simply the lack of strong institutions, as it were, in which case we then need to make do with clinging onto some personalities as a sort of source of...
I think so. The issue of our weak institution, for starters, for some reason, Nigeria has become a nation of orphans, where people are looking for fathers who are not their father. All of a sudden, somebody stands up and says the governor is their father, the president is their father. I'm wondering what happened to their own fathers in that.
Sheyi Shubu said to us, to the Northerners, where he went about to say, you're watching them talk to your father like this.
Well, that's the kind of language you've allowed, and that language is not a democratic, civil, nor modern. It's archaic, it's barbaric, and it's parochial, and we shouldn't allow that kind of language. But the point, though, is that you say institution, and this is why I have a problem with the opposition. The duty of opposition is to bring together ideas that can be seen as reliable and alternative to government, and then coalesce people around it and making the opposition vibrant, a place you want to belong to because of what is going on there. That is what you call in strategy the burden of leadership. It is the leaders of opposition that will make the opposition attractive enough for people not want to leave them. How do you do that? You need 3 V's. You need vigor, vision, and vessel. If you can put those kind of things together, and that's what you need to put together, then people will stay with you regardless of what happens. I mean, of course, it's easy. Very soon, I'll be chairing the June 12th event. It's easy to see now the good people that were with June 12th. But don't forget that some people were with Abacha. Some people were benefiting from it quietly. But the people who were with the struggle for democracy were proud of it. It was the place to be. The people who were on the other side supporting the bad rule were ashamed of it. They didn't come out happy. They could buy their way. They could surround themselves with the military. But they've not stayed to say, I was with Abacha until Abacha now.
But we don't hear that.
You don't hear that, exactly.
Everybody seems to have fought for democracy.
Exactly. So that's the whole idea. So the opposition need to create that kind of perception of to be the champions of a better Nigeria, and then people will associate with them. And whilst they do that, I'll tell you one other thing they need to do. It is not enough for them to make their corner good. They have the duty of making life difficult for those in office, so that the privileges that those ones share and use to drag people near them, they should denounce it and expose it and show that it is not the right thing to do. But the problem we have here is that I'm afraid that the people in opposition would like to be like people in government.
So it's a case of the ceiling fan, or is it the standing fan? It's just because it's not your turn yet that you are bickering at us. If it was your turn, you'd rather have my seat and do what exactly?
That's a very sad and pedestrian place to be. I hope that, as I like to say, the beautiful ones are yet to be born. I hope that a new crop of Nigerians will come out to see the vision of doing the right thing, of building institutions, making the state work, making our roads clean, our community safe.
And before I move on, Professor, I'd like to take you back on the beautiful ones not yet born. That used to be my mom's statement a lot when I was a teenager.
There you go.
And she says, the beautiful ones are just not yet born. And I'm like, Mom, we're born, we are here. And I want to say that to you as well. We're born, we're here. We just do hope, indeed, that we're not corrupted by all that we've seen and now internalized from having seen the older generation play out before us. And quite frankly, the question of democracy that you brought up, I want us to interrogate it a little bit more. And it's to ask you pointedly what you make of democracy under the President Bola Tinubu. What is democracy? Democracy for what it is. What has it become? The freedom that we should enjoy and what's not.
Well, I think it would be unfair to limit it to 2 years. It will not be a good analysis to limit it 2 years. I do not agree with the people who cry that freedom of speech is so encroached. It's not true. You can still say things. I criticize the president every day I can, and there are other people that criticize him. It is easier not to criticize.
But there were individuals who were denied rights from having been released from their cells last year. I recall from some protests that they could never protest amidst a few other cases here and there, if my memory serves me.
No, you're right. I agree. I think overall, from 1999 to 2025, it's better to look at the picture that way. I think we're far from the real tenets of democracy, as it were. We still have a lot of work to do. Our institutions are weak. We have strong people, weak institutions, and that is not helping matter. I also think that we want to help ourselves, and here I have a very unpopular but high-held view. I think we're talking about our leaders. We need to go and look at our quality of voters as well. I think our premise of universal adult suffrage, which is that everybody, regardless of who they are, as long as they're 18 and Nigerians, can vote, I think is wrong. It's a good idea, like this government. It's good intention. But I think it's wrong to equiparate voting to a right or to a proof of citizenship. I think we need to consider voting like a duty. I think we need to consider the PVC like a driver's license. To say that if you want to vote, you must show 2 things. One, that you're capable of understanding what it's about.
The basics.
Yes, I will give it 60 jam-like questions. For you pass those things, you get a minimum of 50 marks, then you collect your voting card. You don't pass it, come and do it again. Because that way, you see, what we have at the moment is a system where voters, by thumb printing, they elect people who are going to deal with fiscal policy, monetary policy, defense, urban planning, environmental policies. You know, they're going to deal with all these things. Then, and I want our viewers to go back to Punch video or anywhere, to go and just put in 2 words, election vote in Nigeria. Look at the people voting, and you ask yourself still why we're where we are. Those people have, many of the voters have no idea. So one is for people to show that they understand what they're voting about. The other is that I will ask people to vote only if they have proved that they've paid their tax in the last 2 years. And they should not pay it on one day.
Okay.
So that people don't pay it for
It has been paid incrementally. It's a lifestyle that you pay your taxes.
So that way, I would design, for us, if we're looking at democracy, I would design a democracy in which the voters are knowledgeable and are true stakeholders. When you know that truly is your tax that they're administering that way, and that you understand what is voted, and people celebrate more voters, they worry about voter apathy. Some genius in the House of Assembly are trying to make voting mandatory. Those are very silly things. You don't have to have 100% of voters. If people are true stakeholders, and you cannot bribe them, you cannot buy them, their attitude towards government will be different. Let me say to you, it does not matter to me if only 20% of people are voting. It doesn't matter. Because they will now the ones who are truly informed and interested. But those ones will go there and vote. Why is it that the middle class don't go to vote? Because when they get to polling vote, the place does not look like them. They are shoved away by a long queue of people who have no clue what they ought to be doing there. That's part of the problem we have. You see people protesting and doing government things. They turn campaigns to singing and dancing. When you see, there's something about us in this country. We like to plant tomato and expect corn to come out. If you look at the charade that election campaigning is, you will know what's going to come out. Those who are not there to talk about races, they're singing and dancing, they're doing booga. So with that, and that's the kind of thing people like. There's a governor in this country now. He's been convincing me, in fact, I need to go to Osun State to go and see what he's really doing. He's been trying to convince me, because I've said that with the amount of dancing you're doing, I don't think you'll be governing. But here's my point. He can dance. You know what my issue is? That people like him for the dancing.
And nobody seems to be questioning
about the governance. So he, by himself, is going out to show governance. But ordinarily, governor and dancing shouldn't go together. You know, governance should be a sober, serious thing that you're doing. Right? That you're taking care of. So it goes back to also the kind of voters we have. You know, I've seen people comment, oh, I like this governor, no dull moment. Is that what you voted him for? Their viewers, you know. We need to look at ourselves and know that governance is a very serious issue. It doesn't have to be fun.
Thank you.
It has to deliver.
And speaking of not fun and delivering, I think we should then take these to security. In the past 2 years, it's been said that maybe well over 10,000 people have now died under the President Bola Tinubu's administration, and maybe more, maybe less, of course, as you know, the data in Nigeria. But the question then goes, what do you think the hope of people in Benue State, people in Borno, people in Niger State, people in Zamfara, and Kaduna, and also Plateau, and also for the states like this that are plagued almost on a daily basis should be? And how do you essentially think they're rating this administration?
I think they're not happy because they keep talking about the security, and that's a sad thing because we've been talking about the security now for what, 8 years of Barry, 2 years of this one, about 2 or 3 years of Jonathan as well. So that makes it 8 plus 2 plus 3. That is a lot. That is a lot of us dealing with the same issue. And we have to look at it this way. It's a symptom of a failed or failing state. Because the essence of a state is the ability to have the monopoly of superior and legitimate force. And that force needs to be deployed. I agree. I understand with people who say to fight banditry, terrorism, and other kind of crime, you need to do social policy, you need to do education, you need to do a Bachelor of Arts and Mind. I understand and I agree that, but I also believe that we must declare that A, the people trying to take our lands and kill and our lives are our enemies, and we must declare war on them. I believe that the state has to deploy so much force that it will scare terrorists not to terrorize. I believe that the state needs to deploy intelligence so that we know how they get the ammunition that will stop them at the borders, because we don't produce those things in Nigeria. The state has to use enough forensic to know how they get money and how they spend it. The state has to use technology. I think we need to deploy our force. We need to use intelligence. We need to use technology. But I also believe we need to militarize the zones where we think terrorists are operating. We need to find it in a way that when you go there, you know there is war.
What do you think is pulling the government back from being able to fully militarize? I do not think there is anything stopping them. Why then do we not have that?
Well, I don't know. I think we need to review the way we're operating things. Part of the problem we have is that we've been going on this thing now for over 12 years. The people managing the affairs have not been shamed to say you've not done well. If anything, some of the generals were promoted as ambassadors. So why would you do well when the people doing bad are getting rewarded? That's a problem we have. We need a president who's going to look at it and say, I'm firing you, I'm pulling you apart because you've not done well. The next ones I'm inviting, let them come up with a plan that will change it in 6 months. Maybe not get over it, but let's have a change to say progress, so that we will see it. Let them not give us details. I'm a student of security strategy, so there's some things I know you cannot see outside, but at least the ones that can be felt, let it be felt. And I want Nigerians not to give any government, whether state government or federal government, a breathing space on this matter, because on the days of election, I have seen how Nigerian government can militarize the country. On the day of the election, because I go around, I have seen that the Nigerian police force has helicopters. I didn't even know. Most people will not know they have helicopters.
I think it was election that made me realize.
But you see, that's the thing. So that means that if they can do it,
the capacity is there.
For election, let them do it for lives and property, because security is not just about being safe. It is also what affects our ability to produce. Because if people cannot go to the farm, then we cannot get food. And if we don't get food, food becomes expensive and people will employ.
Thank you, Professor. I should think we're nearing the end of all of this conversation, but then it just occurred to me that we've spoken about midterm review of the president, but we haven't said anything about the legislature. And, there was in the 9th Assembly, the question, the rubber stamp question. And I think that question has been rearing its head again in this 10th Assembly to say, is the current administration, led by Godswill Akpabio, equally rubber stamping the executive arm of government, or are they essentially doing what we expect of them, scrutinizing, properly subjecting to due processes before we then have, yes, this is our decision, or is it just the president says it, we believe it, we do it, we get it done?
Well, this is part of the issue we have with civic education. I think there's a misunderstanding and a wrong expectation of the legislative arm of government. You see, in our mind, in most people's mind, a lot of people think that the legislator is there to fight the government or to ensure they don't do bad things. But it's not true, because in reality, they are the same people, they come from the same party. They will tend to agree with each other. And I believe they're not even using that link well enough, because some things are going there and something for debate doesn't work well. What we call legislative arm of government in Nigeria is a part of the legislature, it's the opposition. Yes. It is the opposition that's supposed to be vibrant because they also have different ideas from government. Those that are side of government and are majority, it is legitimate for them to rubber stamp. Where they will not rubber stamp, quote unquote rubber stamp, where we don't rubber stamp is where what the government wants to do violates, or it is not in the interest of the constitution or their constituency. So their own interest should be constitution and constituency. But the other issue I have, though, and this is where we can now judge the legislature, and I'm going to, and I think at some point this year, we might undertake that study and publish it with CGPI report. The problem we have is in 2 years of legislature since they've been sworn in, there are some parliamentarians that we do not even know what they've done in those 2 years. We cannot remember them sponsoring any bill, opposing any bill, no quotable. As a matter of fact, since 1999, there are some people who have been in parliament since then, some people who have been out, that they cannot be remembered for anything specific. You see, those are issues that we need to look at. They just went there.
They've had repeated tenures, some of them.
They made their chair comfortable. Oh, one thing they're known for is their wardrobe. They've just been changing wardrobe every time and been dressing well. Those are things we need to look at. I propose, for example, that since they have wardrobe allowance, I think members of legislature should wear the same wardrobe like youth corpers.
Oh, a uniform?
Yes, they should be dressed like youth corpers, so we save ourselves all this trouble that they're having.
And save
a lot of money and even send a signal that they're there to serve. I also believe, for example, that they should be mandated to consult regularly with their constituents, to present their proposals and report on what they've done. And they should stop giving out gifts of bags and sewing machine and bags of rice. That is not their duty. And they should be taken away from constituency projects. Their duty should be to legislate. That is all. So if we want to look at it, we need to look at it in a very balanced way.
I'm really grateful for the insight you've brought into this. Thank you, Professor. But I'm leaving by talking oil and gas. You know, the savings from oil and gas, we've been told, of course, going back to the beginning of subsidies, gone. We've been told will be reinvested into education, reinvested into this and that. Are you satisfied with what you've had with reinvestment of savings?
No, I'm not satisfied. Rather, I'm actually disappointed because part of the problem we have with these subsidies gone thing is that it was not clear. I think we were speaking on both sides that it was not clear if we've stopped subsidy because the system is corrupt or because we had no money at all to pay for it. I want our viewers to think through this thing. It can't be both. It should be one of the two.
But do you say subsidy is gone or is subsidy still here?
That issue of is it gone? I don't get to that thing. I deal with official positions. Those back-end things, I try to stay away from it. Because when the government says we're stopping subsidy because it's a corrupt thing and some people are taking advantage of it, I said, and I keep saying now, that's wrong. The people involved in subsidy in Nigeria are less than 2,000. You cannot, because of 2,000 people, make life difficult for 200 million people. That doesn't make sense. Go and look for the 2,000 people and stop them from corrupting, abusing the system. Now, if you say, and that's one thing, but if you say the reason why we cannot afford subsidy anymore is that we have no money anymore. They've eaten everything, as we say in Nigeria. The money is gone. That's a different case. But when they now say the savings will be reinvested in something else, the two things about that is that the savings, when they were planning the savings, the dollar was what? About 500 or so to the naira was about 600 or 400 or so to the naira. Now it is 1,500, 600 to it. Any saving is wiped out. I laugh when people say they're increasing the minimum wage to 75,000.
Because it's already cleared out.
That thing is less than the 30,000 they were getting before. It doesn't make any sense. So we cannot see the savings. At least it must be said. The president that was called clueless, President Jonathan, at least when he did his gradual subsidy removal, we saw the Shopee project. This one, we cannot see them, so it's not looking good at all to that extent. They said they sent the money to the state government to spend more. We haven't seen the result of that.
Double we're told in allocation to state governments.
Well, we haven't seen double results, and also inflation. What they call double is not true. Inflation has wiped it away.
Thank you.
But that said, the state governors, though, the little they get, let them show account of it as well.
So, Professor, I could go on and on, but for what this conversation is about, I think we've exhausted it. Thank you for obliging us and having this conversation with me today. And I do hope, indeed, that the Nigeria you hope we could have, we really would have it, and soon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me on Punch Exclusive today. That has been Professor Anthony Kila, and he has shared his insight on what he believes and how he rates the 2 years of the President Bola Tinubu. Indeed, Punch Exclusive return again with yet another insightful conversation. To look out for it. My name is Melanie Ishola. Goodbye.